A desperate father's plea to clean toilets for food made a millionaire freeze in shock. She recognized something familiar in his desperation, the same hunger she'd felt 25 years ago. What happened next changed 3 lives forever and proved that angels sometimes appear as strangers. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Michael stared at the rain streaking down the coffee shop window, his empty stomach growling loudly enough that the woman at the next table glanced over. He pressed his hand against his abdomen, trying to silence the embarrassing sound. 3 days. It had been 3 days since he'd had a proper meal, and the last of his change had gone to buy Emma a small carton of milk that morning. His 7-year-old daughter sat beside him, her tiny hands wrapped around a cup of free water, her school backpack looking too big on her small frame. She hadn't complained once, not even when he'd told her they couldn't afford dinner again. Emma just smiled her gap-toothed smile and said she wasn't that hungry anyway. But Michael saw the way she eyed the pastries in the display case. He saw how she licked her lips when other customers walked by with steaming plates of food. His heart shattered a little more each time. "Daddy, when are we going home?" Emma asked quietly, her voice barely audible above the coffee shop's ambient noise. "Oh." Michael's throat tightened. They didn't have a home anymore. The eviction notice had been served 2 weeks ago, and they'd been staying in his old Honda Civic ever since. The car that barely ran, with a heater that only worked sometimes and windows that leaked when it rained hard. "Soon, sweetheart," he whispered, stroking her tangled blonde hair. "Daddy's just figuring some things out." The truth was he had no idea what to do next. The construction job he'd lost 3 months ago when the company downsized had been their lifeline. His wife Sarah had died in a car accident 2 years ago, leaving him to raise Emma alone. The medical bills from Sarah's final weeks in the hospital had drained their savings, and without her income as a nurse, everything had spiraled downward fast. He'd applied everywhere. Fast food restaurants, grocery stores, warehouses, cleaning companies. But without a permanent address, reliable childcare, or even clean clothes for interviews, every door seemed to slam shut in his face. Michael watched a well-dressed woman enter the coffee shop, shaking rain from her expensive-looking coat. She had perfectly styled auburn hair and carried a leather handbag that probably cost more than he used to make in a month. She looked around the crowded space, clearly searching for somewhere to sit. Desperation makes people do things they never thought possible. Michael had never begged before, had never imagined he'd be the kind of person who would. But watching Emma pretend she wasn't hungry, seeing her brave little face trying to stay cheerful while they lived in a car, something broke inside him. He stood up slowly, his legs shaky from lack of food and sleep. Emma looked up at him with confused eyes. "Stay right here, baby. Don't move, okay?" Michael approached the woman, who was now checking her phone while waiting in line. His heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were trembling. This was humiliating, degrading, everything he'd sworn he'd never do. But Emma needed to eat. "Excuse me, ma'am?" His voice came out rougher than intended. The woman looked up and he saw her take in his appearance. His stained jeans, the wrinkled shirt he'd been wearing for days, his unwashed hair, the desperate look in his eyes. He watched her expression change from polite attention to wariness. "I'm sorry to bother you," Michael continued, the words feeling like broken glass in his throat. I know how this looks. But I'm wondering if maybe, would you let me clean your toilet for a plate of food?" The coffee shop seemed to go quiet around them, though Michael knew that was probably just his imagination. The woman stared at him, her green eyes wide with what he assumed was disgust or alarm. "I'm not crazy," he added quickly, seeing her take a small step back. "I'm not on drugs or anything like that. My daughter and I were going through a really tough time and she hasn't eaten in." His voice cracked. "Please, I'll clean your whole bathroom. Hell, I'll clean your whole house if you want. I just need to feed my little girl." The woman's face had gone completely still. She wasn't speaking, wasn't moving. Michael felt the familiar burn of rejection building in his chest. "I'm sorry," he said, backing away. "I shouldn't have. I'm sorry for bothering you." But as he turned to go back to Emma, the woman's voice stopped him. "Wait." Michael froze. When he turned back, the woman was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. "Your daughter?" she said quietly. "Where is she?" Michael pointed to the corner table where Emma sat swinging her legs, still clutching her cup of water. The woman followed his gaze, and Michael saw something shift in her face when she took in Emma's too thin frame, her worn-out clothes, the way she was trying to make herself small in the big chair. "How old is she?" 7. Michael's voice was barely a whisper. The woman was quiet for a long moment, studying Emma from across the room. When she finally looked back at Michael, her eyes were different. Softer somehow but also fierce in a way that made him take notice. "My name is Victoria Sterling," she said. "And I want to hear your story." "Ma'am, I don't need charity," Michael said quickly. "I'm willing to work for whatever." "I didn't say anything about charity." Her voice was firm but not unkind. "I said I want to hear your story. There's a difference." Victoria gestured toward Emma's table. "May I?" Michael nodded, confused but hopeful. They walked over together and Emma looked up with wide, curious eyes. "Emma, this is Miss Victoria," Michael said. "Victoria, this is my daughter Emma." "Hi there, Emma," Victoria said, settling into the chair across from the little girl. Her voice was gentle now, completely different from the authoritative tone she'd used with Michael. "That's a very pretty name." Emma smiled shyly. "Thank you. Are you my daddy's friend?" "We just met," Victoria said. "But I'm hoping we can all be friends." "Are you hungry, sweetheart?" Emma glanced at her father before nodding. "A little bit." Victoria's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She turned to Michael. "When did either of you last eat a real meal?" Michael felt his cheeks burn with shame. "I had some crackers yesterday morning." She had the milk today and some peanut butter crackers I got from the food bank on Monday." "Monday?" Victoria's voice was very quiet. "Today is Thursday." The weight of that statement hung in the air. Michael saw Victoria's hands clench and unclench in her lap. "Emma," Victoria said, forcing brightness into her voice, "what's your favorite food in the whole world?" Emma's eyes lit up. "Pancakes. My mommy used to make them with chocolate chips and they were fluffy and perfect and—" Her voice trailed off, and Michael saw the sadness creep back into her expression. "Your mommy isn't with you anymore?" Victoria asked gently. Emma shook her head. "She went to heaven. But Daddy takes really good care of me. He tells me stories and sings songs and makes sure I'm safe always." Michael felt tears prick his eyes. Even now, even hungry and homeless, Emma was defending him, protecting him from judgment. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then she stood up. "I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere." She walked to the counter and Michael watched her speak quietly to the barista. A few minutes later, the barista brought over a tray loaded with food. Sandwiches, soup, cookies, hot chocolate for Emma and coffee for Michael. The smell hit him like a physical force and his stomach cramped with need. "Please," Victoria said, sitting back down. "Eat." Emma looked at her father for permission. When he nodded, she dove into the food with the desperate hunger of a child who had been trying to be brave for too long. Michael ate more slowly, partly because he was afraid of making himself sick, but mostly because he was still processing what was happening. "Why?" he asked Victoria between bites. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria was watching Emma eat, her expression thoughtful. "Because 25 years ago I was 7 years old, sitting in a McDonald's with my mother, watching her ask strangers if they had any spare change so we could buy food." Michael nearly choked on his sandwich. "You were homeless, hungry, living in our car." Victoria's voice was matter-of-fact, but Michael caught the pain underneath. "My father had died in an industrial accident, and my mother was working 3 jobs but still couldn't keep up with the bills. We lost our apartment and for 6 months, we lived wherever we could." Emma had finished her sandwich and was working on the soup, but Michael could see she was listening to every word. "What happened?" Michael asked. "A woman named Margaret Chin found us sleeping in the parking lot behind her restaurant one night. She could have called the police, had us moved along like so many others did. Instead, she brought us inside, fed us, and then she did something that changed everything." Victoria paused, her eyes distant with memory. "She gave my mother a job. Not charity, not a handout. A job. She let us stay in the small apartment above the restaurant until we got back on our feet. She looked at us and saw people worth investing in, not problems to be shuffled away." Michael felt something tight in his chest begin to loosen. "Where is she now?" "Margaret. She died 3 years ago," Victoria said softly. "Cancer. But before she passed, she made me promise something. She made me promise that if I ever had the power to help someone the way she helped us, I would do it without hesitation." Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table to Michael. He picked it up with shaking hands. "Sterling Construction and Development. Victoria Sterling, CEO." Michael looked up at her in shock. "You're—" "I built my company from nothing just like Margaret taught me. Started with 1 construction crew and a borrowed truck. Now I employ over 300 people across the state." Victoria's voice was steady, proud but not boastful. And I'm always looking for good people who understand what it means to work hard. Ma'am, I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't have any special skills. I was just basic construction, framing and drywall mostly. And I don't have a permanent address or childcare or... Stop. Victoria held up a hand. Margaret didn't help us because we had it all figured out. She helped us because we were trying, despite everything working against us. She saw my mother working 3 jobs and still ending up homeless, and she recognized that the system was broken, not the people caught in it. Emma had finished eating and was now coloring on a napkin with a crayon she'd found in her backpack. She looked content for the first time in days, and the sight of it made Michael's chest ache. I have a job opening, Victoria continued. Site supervisor for a housing development we're building about 20 minutes from here. It pays well, includes health insurance, and we work with a local childcare center that offers sliding scale fees based on income. Michael stared at her. You don't even know me. You don't know if I'm reliable or if I know what I'm doing or... I know you offered to clean a stranger's toilet so your daughter could eat, Victoria said firmly. I know you've kept her safe and fed and loved despite circumstances that would break most people. I know she adores you and trusts you completely. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. She leaned forward, her green eyes intense. But more than that, I know what it's like to be where you are right now. I know the desperation, the fear, the way it feels like the whole world has decided you don't matter. And I know that sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to see your worth when you can barely see it yourself. Michael felt tears sliding down his cheeks. He wiped them away quickly, embarrassed, but Victoria didn't seem to judge him for it. There's more, she said. The company owns several rental properties for employees who are getting back on their feet. Small houses, nothing fancy but clean and safe and affordable. You and Emma could move in as soon as this weekend. I can't. Michael's voice broke. I can't afford deposits and first month's rent, and the first 3 months are free while you get established. After that, rent is taken directly from your paycheck, and it's set at no more than 30% of your income. Margaret designed the program herself before she died. She wanted to make sure no one else had to choose between housing and food. Emma looked up from her coloring. Daddy, why are you crying? Michael wiped his eyes again and managed a smile. Happy tears, baby. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're really, really happy. Emma smiled back and went back to her drawing. She was sketching a house with stick figures standing in front of it, a man and a little girl holding hands. Victoria saw the drawing too. That's beautiful, Emma. Is that you and your daddy? Yes. And this is our new house that we're going to live in, and it has a real bed and a kitchen and maybe even a backyard where Daddy can teach me to throw a baseball like he promised. Michael felt his heart break and heal at the same time. Emma had been listening, had understood more than he'd realized. She'd been holding on to hope even when he'd lost it. I don't know how to repay you, Michael said to Victoria. This is everything. This is more than I ever dared to hope for. You don't repay me, Victoria said. You work hard, you take care of your daughter, and someday when you're in a position to help someone else who's struggling, you do it. That's how it works. That's how we make sure Margaret's legacy lives on. She stood up and extended her hand to Michael. So what do you say? Ready to start over? Michael stood up too, taking her hand in both of his. Yes. God, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Victoria said with a smile. Wait until you see how hard I'm going to work you. I don't believe in handouts, remember? You're going to earn every penny. I wouldn't have it any other way. Victoria turned to Emma. And you, Miss Emma, what do you say we go look at your new house? I think there might even be a room that's just the right size for a 7-year-old princess. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? A room just for me? Just for you? With a window that looks out over the park so you can watch the other kids playing? Emma jumped up and hugged Victoria tightly around the waist. Thank you for helping my daddy. He's the best daddy in the whole world, but sometimes he gets really sad and I don't know how to make it better. Victoria hugged her back and Michael saw her blink away tears. Well, I think things are going to get a lot better for both of you. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Real, solid hope that tomorrow would be better than today. Victoria, he said as they reached the door. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you first saw me when I asked about cleaning your toilet, you looked, I don't know, frozen. What were you thinking? Victoria was quiet for a moment, holding the door open as rain continued to fall outside. I was thinking about my mother. About how many times I watched her ask for help and get turned away. About how different our lives might have been if just one person had said yes sooner. She looked at Emma, who was skipping ahead toward Victoria's car, already chattering about what color she wanted to paint her new room. But mostly, Victoria continued, I was thinking about Margaret and how she used to say that we're all just walking each other home. Sometimes we're the ones who need help finding the way, and sometimes we're the ones who get to hold the light. Michael nodded, understanding flooding through him. And today you held the light. Today I held the light, Victoria agreed. Tomorrow maybe it'll be your turn to hold it for someone else. As they drove through the rain toward Emma's new house, toward their new life, Michael made a silent promise. Someday when he was strong enough, stable enough, successful enough, he would find someone who needed help. Someone desperate and scared and convinced the world had given up on them. And he would hold the light. 6 months later, Michael Sterling, he'd legally changed his last name to honor the woman who'd saved them, stood in the parking lot of the same coffee shop where his life had changed. He was wearing a clean shirt, work boots that weren't falling apart, and he had a steady paycheck in his pocket. But more importantly, he was there with a young mother he'd met at the job site, a woman who'd been living in her car with her twin toddlers, too proud to ask for help but too desperate to keep going alone. I know this seems impossible, he told her gently as they walked toward the door. But sometimes impossible things happen. Sometimes angels show up looking like regular people, and they remind you that you're worth saving. Emma, now 8 and thriving in school, skipped beside them. She was wearing a new dress and had gained back the weight she'd lost during those hard months. Her smile was bright and genuine, free from the worry that had shadowed it before. Is this the place where Miss Victoria found us, Daddy? She asked. This is the place, Michael confirmed. Good, Emma said solemnly. Then it's the perfect place to find someone new to help. And as they entered the warm coffee shop, Michael felt the circle completing itself. Margaret had helped Victoria, Victoria had helped him, and now he would help someone else. The light passed from hand to hand, generation to generation, making the world a little brighter one person at a time. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to see worth where others see only problems. One person willing to say yes when the world keeps saying no. One person brave enough to hold the light when darkness threatens to win. That day in the coffee shop, Victoria Sterling had been that person for Michael and Emma. Today it was their turn to be that person for someone else. The rain outside had stopped and sunlight was beginning to break through the clouds.